Kia ora koutou. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about linear graphs, which are a straight line. And when you've got an equation that gives us a straight line, we're going to want to look at it in this form, which is y is equal to mx plus c. And when it's in this form, with y being all by itself on one side of the equation, we're going to have some information that's just jumping right out at us. And there are two things in particular you want to look for. The number that's in front of x, that number could be a decimal, could be a whole number, could be a fraction. That number in front of x, which we call m, well, that's known as the gradient or the slope of the line. It tells us how quickly something is changing. If you think back to the example with the hostels and how much it cost for a certain number of people to stay a night in the hostel, that cost per night, that's going to be the gradient m, however much was charged per night. And this other piece, this constant term, this number that's added on to the end, well, that's the letter c, and that's considered to be the y-intercept of the line. That number tells us where does our straight line cross the y-axis. And thinking back to our hostel problem, that c, that constant term, that was the fixed price per night. Regardless of how many people stayed there, that was the cost per night of this, the fixed charge. Okay, so there's the two things we're going to be looking for when our equation begins. Y equals, that number in front of x, m, is the gradient or slope of the line, tells us how steep the line is. And the value c, that constant term, that number with no letter in front of it, that is the y-intercept of the line. Now there are three skills that you're going to want to be able to do with this assessment. First one, you're going to want to be able to draw the graph given the equation. So if we give you the equation, you're going to want to be able to draw the graph. And also the other way around. If you are given the graph, you're going to need to be able to produce the equation from that graph. And lastly, you're going to need to be able to find the equation of a line given a sentence, very much like we did with our hostel problem. So this is our chalk and talk on linear graphs. Lets you know what we're going to be responsible for. Coming up next will be a few examples.